Sometimes in the middle of an ordinary day, something strange happens. You're standing in line at the supermarket. Your hand unnecessarily holds your cell phone. Your eyes wander over the shelves, but they see nothing. And then, without understanding exactly why, you realize that something is wrong. It's not pain. It's not sadness. It's something quieter, heavier, like a tiredness that isn't in your muscles but deep in your chest. A kind of emptiness that doesn't hurt but presses down. As if your very existence were slightly misaligned, like a chair with one leg shorter than the others that never sits quite right on the floor. You feel it, but you don't talk about it. No one does. Everyone seems too busy pretending they're fine, too busy trying to make life work, too busy holding everything together without losing their sanity. But behind the silence, behind the jokes, the goals, the daily stories on social media, there is a question that almost no one asks out loud. What if none of this really means anything? What if we're just stacking days like someone trying to stack air? There's a book in the Bible that asks this question without fear. Ecclesiastes, a text so brutally honest that to some, it almost sounds like heresy. It was written by a man who had everything: wisdom, wealth, pleasure, power, and yet couldn't bear the weight of having it all. Think about it. The kind of life that today would look flawless on social media. A polished feed, a TED Talk, a best-selling biography. But in the end, this man said, vanity of vanities. Everything is vanity. Or, in the original Hebrew, hevel, vapor, smoke, something that seems solid but slips through your fingers the moment you try to hold it. Have you ever felt that? Got what you wanted, and yet something bitter remained? Looked at someone you love and silently wondered how long they will still be here? Achieved a big goal only to realize that it didn't change the emptiness inside? Ecclesiastes is not a manual, it is a mirror. And perhaps it is the cruelest of all, and because it does not show how to win in life. It shows that no one wins. Not the righteous, not the wicked, not the wise, not the foolish. Everyone ends up in the same dust. But here's the twist. This strange, dark, almost uncomfortable book can also be one of the most liberating. Yes, everything is vanity, but maybe that's exactly why living now matters so much. There are moments when you stop listening to music without realizing why. You open Spotify, look at the screen and don't press anything. It's not a lack of time. It's not that you don't like the songs anymore. It's just that, at some invisible point, life lost its soundtrack. It doesn't seem dramatic, but it is. Because when pleasure becomes noise, when beauty loses its flavor, when everything new starts to look the same as everything old, something in you has died silently. It's the exhaustion of having too much. And it doesn't hit you like a hammer. It rusts like scrap metal, slowly, quietly, until you can no longer ignore it. The author of Ecclesiastes experienced this long before us. Not because of poverty, but because of abundance. And that changes everything. He writes, I built houses, planted vineyards, made gardens, accumulated wealth, had servants, gathered treasures, surrounded myself with pleasures. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not deny them. This is not the confession of a monk. It is the last entry in the diary of a lucid hedonist. Someone who tasted everything the world had to offer and still found himself empty. And in the end he says, behold, all was vanity, running after the wind. Today, psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill, the concept that shows how every pleasure or achievement eventually fades and we return to the same starting point of desire. Another promotion, another body, another like, and then nothing. David Foster Wallace saw this pattern too. He said, everyone loves something. The only choice is what to love. And almost everything you love will devour you alive. And we are being devoured alive. We live in a time when pleasure is everywhere, but meaning is scarce. Pornography is a click away, but intimacy has become fear. Food is fast, but eating has become guilt. Entertainment is endless, but minds are bored. Desire has become an algorithm. The heart has become a product. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote that life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom. But the man in Ecclesiastes saw something even worse. That between pain and boredom, there is false relief, a dry pleasure, a quiet anesthesia that hides the absurdity of it all. And here is the point where if this were a typical video, I would give you a solution. A 5-step escape plan, a moment of how to fix your life. But doing so would be dishonest. Because the harsh truth is there is no easy escape from saturation. When everything is possible, nothing has weight. When everything is within reach, nothing feels like a real achievement. That's why the narrator of Ecclesiastes matters so much today. He's not depressed, he's awake. He climbed to the top and realized there was no sky there. Milan Kundera wrote, vertigo is not the fear of falling, it is the desire to fall. And maybe that's what we feel sometimes. Not the fear of losing everything, but a strange, dark curiosity to see if losing everything would finally wake something up inside us. This text doesn't end with comfort. It ends with a quiet, uncomfortable noise, like the silence of a song that used to be your favorite but doesn't play anymore. The spoon touched the plate. She said, "God has a purpose for everything." It was a funeral. Her father had just died at the age of 49 from aggressive cancer. No one knew what to say, so everyone just nodded, as if faith were the same thing as acceptance. But deep down, she didn't believe what she said. She was just repeating a phrase she had heard 1,000 times. The kind of line that comes out when words can't keep up with the pain. Inside, what she really wanted to ask was the question that almost no one dares to ask. Where was God when everything fell apart? The brutal truth is that the Bible also holds this question. It's not hidden. It's right there in Ecclesiastes. With much wisdom comes much suffering. The more knowledge, the more pain. It's the verse that most sermons skip over, but it's there, raw and unfiltered. The more you understand life, the more unbearable it becomes. The wise suffer not because they are weak, but because they are awake. Ecclesiastes was written by someone who knew God, not just from hearing about him, but from talking to him. The text is often attributed to Solomon, the man who asked for wisdom instead of power. And what he saw through that wisdom was a broken world, an unresponsive God, a time that doesn't explain, a justice that fails again and again. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard called this the anguish of faith. That moment when believing ceases to be comforting and begins to be terrifying. Believing without guarantees, loving without return, trusting in the sacred when the world shows only ruins. And that is why many people do not abandon faith because of reason. They abandon it because of trauma. When pain is real, no abstract idea can comfort you. C.S. Lewis, mourning his wife, wrote, "Go to God when your need is desperate. What you find is a door slammed in your face and the sound of bolts being locked from the inside." He didn't stop believing. He just stopped pretending that faith is the same thing as comfort. Simone Weil went even further. For her, God's absence is not proof against him. It is his deepest language. Love that does not impose itself. Silence that respects our pain. The sacred retreating so as not to manipulate us. This is difficult to accept because we have been taught to treat God as spiritual insurance. If you pay with prayers and good deeds, he will fix things. But Ecclesiastes tears up that contract. The writer observes the righteous suffering and the wicked prospering. The fool laughs and the wise man dies in the same way. He asks, what is the meaning of all this, if even God seems incoherent? And here lies something that few dare to say aloud. Perhaps mature faith is not about understanding God, but about enduring him, enduring the silence, enduring the contradictions, believing not because everything makes sense, but because without something beyond ourselves, everything becomes unbearable. Rubem Alves said, "Faith is not a light that removes all darkness. It is a lamp that illuminates only one step at a time." That is exactly what Ecclesiastes does. No promises of happy endings. No revelation that explains everything. Just a man looking up at the heavens, seeing them closed and still choosing to continue, to keep talking, to keep existing. Maybe that's what faith really is. Staying even when the signal is gone. Walking even when the ground isn't there. Living even when God is silent. But there is another kind of silence. Not the silence of God, the silence of our own certainties crumbling. Because wisdom is not accumulating answers. It is losing the questions you thought mattered. The man who wrote Ecclesiastes had everything. And when I say everything, I'm not exaggerating. He had knowledge that kings envied. He had advisors, scribes, access to sacred texts, direct conversations with prophets. He studied, he reflected, he sought. And in the end he wrote, "I sought with my mind how to cheer my body with wine. I sought to know wisdom and madness. And I saw that this too was chasing the wind." It's not defeat, it's diagnosis. Wisdom did not save him. It exposed him. It exposed the fragility of everything. It exposed the injustice that no one wants to admit. It exposed the fact that no matter how much you understand, you control nothing. There is a scene in Bulgakov's The Master and Margarita where Pilate, the most powerful man in the region, realizes that his power means nothing in the face of the mystery of Christ. He can order the execution, but he cannot order its meaning. That is the curse of lucidity, seeing that power and wisdom do not give you control over what really matters. And perhaps that is why modern philosophy has become so obsessed with absurdity. Because the more humanity has learned, the less sense the world has made. Camus saw it. Sartre saw it. Curran saw it. But Ecclesiastes saw it 3,000 years earlier, without jargon, without postmodern theory, without academic pretension. Just the brutal confession of someone who woke up too much to go back to sleep. I devoted my heart to knowing wisdom, and I realized that this too is a distress of spirit. It's not ignorance that hurts, it's clarity. And here lies something that no one tells you when you're young and full of questions. Sometimes the answer is worse than the question. Sometimes discovering the truth about how the world works doesn't set you free. It condemns you, because now you see. You see the hypocrisy. You see the futility. You see how people lie to themselves just to keep functioning, and you can't do that anymore. So you carry the weight of knowing, and no one tells you how to carry that weight without being crushed by it. Kierkegaard called this the despair of knowledge, the despair of those who see the cage but cannot get out of it, of those who understand the game but still have to play it. Ecclesiastes offers no way out. It just validates. It says, yes, you're right, it's all absurd, and you're not crazy for seeing it, you're awake. And maybe in the end, that validation is more important than any solution. Because when someone finally confirms what you've always felt, that the world doesn't make sense, that justice isn't automatic, that kindness isn't rewarded, that effort doesn't guarantee results, you stop fighting reality. You stop blaming yourself for not being able to make everything work. And maybe, just maybe, you start living despite it. Not because you found meaning, but because you stopped demanding that meaning come before you could breathe. Ecclesiastes whispers the opposite. It looks you straight in the eye and says you're not in control, you never were. There is a time for everything under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot. People often read this verse as a comforting poem. It's not. It's a list of everything you don't control. It's not about choosing the right moment. It's about accepting that the moment chooses you. We live in a culture that disguises randomness with spreadsheets. We love to tell ourselves that anything can be achieved through discipline, intelligence, and hard work. But that's a pretty lie dressed up as motivational speech. The truth is closer to what Baruch Spinoza said. Men think themselves free because they are conscious of their actions, but they are unaware of the causes that determine them. You think you've made a decision, but maybe you've just obeyed something you don't fully understand. A fear, a wound, a trauma, an algorithm, and time. That polite, relentless tyrant keeps moving forward without asking, without permission. You may be young and die tomorrow. You may eat healthy and still have a stroke. You may do everything right and still be crushed by randomness. Daniel Kahneman showed this clearly. Most of our predictions about the future are cognitive illusions. Our brains hate uncertainty, so they invent stories of control, even if those stories are lies, especially if they are lies. Ecclesiastes destroys all of this with one sentence. Time and chance happen to everyone. Meritocracy does not survive this verse. Self-help collapses here. Your 5-year plan becomes superstition. But, and this part matters, the book does not preach fatalism. It does not say give up. It says, know the limits of your control. You can plant the seed, but you can't decide if it will rain. You can love, but you can't force someone to love you back. You can live well, but you can't escape death. Clarice Lispector wrote, life is made up of days that mean nothing and moments that mean everything, and none of them can be scheduled. Control is a comforting myth, and perhaps letting go of it, not out of apathy, but out of awareness, is the moment when life becomes real, not a project, a presence. Ecclesiastes does not teach this with anger. It teaches with a strange, tender brutality, like someone looking kindly at you and saying, you don't control anything, but you can still be completely here. And being here, completely present, without the armor of control, without the illusion that you are driving the story, is terrifying, because it means accepting total vulnerability. It means admitting that you can lose everything at any moment, not because of your failure, not because of a lack of effort, just because time and chance happen to everyone. Nassim Taleb called this the black swan, unpredictable events that change everything and that no amount of planning could foresee. But Ecclesiastes already knew this 3,000 years ago. The swift do not always win the race, nor the strong win the battle, nor the wise have bread, nor the intelligent have riches, nor the capable have favor, but time and chance overtake them all. This is not pessimism, it is radical realism. And when you stop fighting it, something strange happens. You don't give up, you become lighter, because now you know the effort is worth it, love is worth it, creation is worth it, not because they guarantee results, but because they are true while they happen. Marcus Aurelius, centuries later, would come to the same conclusion. You have power over your mind, not over external events. Realize this and you will find strength. It is not passive resignation. It is active wisdom, knowing that you can plant carefully, water attentively, protect what is growing, but the harvest does not depend solely on you. And perhaps the greatest act of courage is not to control everything. It is to continue planting, even knowing that storms come without warning. Ecclesiastes observes all this and offers no self-help. It offers no 10-step plan. It offers a mirror that reflects your smallness and your dignity. Because you are small, you are fragile, you are temporary, but you are also conscious. And consciousness, even if brief, even without guarantees, is sacred. Not because the universe owes you anything, but because you exist despite the universe owing you nothing. And that, in the end, is more honest than any promise of control. It is the naked truth. You do not command time. You just live within it. And living within it, without illusions, without armor, without contracts with destiny, that is not weakness. It is the only real way to be alive. Most religions are built on a promise. If you are good, things will make sense. If you follow the rules, there will be order. If you pray enough, pain will mean something. But Ecclesiastes looks directly at that promise and says, no. He doesn't deny God. He doesn't glorify rebellion. He simply reveals what people don't want to hear, that the world is absurd even with God in it. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. This is not the voice of an atheist. It is the voice of a believer who has seen too much. He prayed, he built, he ruled, and he watched it all collapse like sandcastles on the edge of time. This is not the story of a man losing his faith. It is the story of a man losing his illusions. And that is a different kind of fall, quieter, more honest. Friedrich Nietzsche called this kind of clarity the great noon. That moment when the shadows disappear and the world is seen as it is, without masks, without rewards, without cosmic justice, just what is. And here's the paradox. This is where real freedom begins. Not in believing that the universe owes you something, but in walking through it with your eyes open, stripped of guarantees. Albert Camus, when he wrote about the absurd, offered no solutions. He said, "The only honest response to an absurd world is to live it consciously. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, not because the stone will finally reach the top of the mountain, but because the meaning is not in the result. It is in the challenge, in the silent act of pushing, even when nothing makes sense." Ecclesiastes lives in that space too. It does not sugarcoat the emptiness. It looks at it and drinks it slowly like bitter wine. The writer says, there is nothing new under the sun. Empires rise, empires fall. Generations are born, generations are forgotten. Everything repeats itself. People think this is a statement of despair. It is not. It is the cure for arrogance. It breaks the fever of self-importance. You are not the center. I am not the center. Humanity is not the center. We are a brief echo in a vast hallway. And yet there is a strange peace in that. Blaise Pascal wrote, "Man is but a reed, the weakest in nature, but he is a thinking reed." Our fragility is not a flaw. It is the soil in which consciousness flourishes. Knowing that we are temporary need not paralyze us. It can wake us up. When nothing is guaranteed, each breath becomes a small revolt against emptiness. That's why Ecclesiastes says, "Eat your bread with joy and drink your wine with a merry heart." It's not hedonism, it's clarity. It's not saying that nothing matters. It's saying if nothing is guaranteed, then every little moment matters more than anything. The sunset, the laughter, the hand you hold knowing that one day it will be gone. This is not the shallow optimism of motivational speeches. It is the brutal joy of the lucid. Viktor Frankl said, "Even in the darkest night, I will continue walking. Not because I believe the light will come, but because the darkness itself demands it." This is what faith looks like when all the decorations are stripped away. No certainty. No reward, just the raw act of existing fully, even when the sky is silent. Clarice Lispector said it too in her own way. "I live without knowing why, but I live." This is not nihilism, it is maturity. It is standing on the edge of meaning and realizing that the abyss is not your enemy. It is your witness. It watches everything pass by, including you. And yet you breathe. Still you walk. Still you live. Some people will call this surrender. It is not. It is rebellion without a cry. It is what Albert Camus called the gentle indifference of the world. The world does not care, and that can break you or set you free. Ecclesiastes sides with the free, but there is something deeper here. Something that Ecclesiastes forces you to face and that most philosophies try to soften. The writer observes the world and sees. The righteous suffer, the wicked prosper, the wise die, the fool dies. They all end up in the same dust. Where is the justice in that? Where is the moral order we were promised? He doesn't find it. And he doesn't pretend to find it. I saw under the sun that in the place of judgment there was wickedness, and in the place of justice there was iniquity. This is not philosophical disappointment. It is existential trauma. It is the breaking of the central narrative that holds most lives together. The belief that goodness is rewarded, that evil is punished, that the universe maintains an invisible balance. But Ecclesiastes looks at the numbers and says, the numbers don't add up. Dostoevsky explored this in The Brothers Karamazov. Ivan Karamazov, faced with the suffering of innocent children, rejects any God who would allow this. He says, "It's not that I don't accept God, I just respectfully return my ticket." It is not atheism, it is moral revolt. And Ecclesiastes feels that same revolt, but it does not resolve it. It does not offer theodicy. It does not explain why God allows injustice. He just observes it, coldly, honestly. And that honesty is more valuable than any comforting explanation. Because when someone tells you God has a plan in the face of tragedy, what they're really saying is stop feeling what you're feeling. Ecclesiastes doesn't do that. He validates the anger, he validates the confusion, he validates the absurdity. And then, he offers no resolution. He just says, and yet here we are. That yet is everything. It's not optimism. It's not pessimism. It's something deeper. It's the decision to keep going even without knowing why. Simone Weil wrote, "Contradiction is the lever of transcendence." That's exactly it. When you hold on to the contradiction, the righteous suffering, the wicked prospering, God silent, and yet you breathing, loving, living, you don't resolve the absurdity, you transcend it. Not because you found meaning, but because meaning ceased to be a prerequisite for existence. And perhaps that is the most courageous thing a human being can do, to live without guarantees that it is worthwhile, to live without a cosmic judge ensuring that everything will be balanced in the end, to live knowing that injustice may never be corrected, that pain may never be compensated, that kindness may never be seen, and yet still choose kindness, choose love, choose presence, not because you will be rewarded, but because that is who you decide to be, even in a world that owes you nothing. This is what Ecclesiastes teaches when it stops trying to teach. It is what emerges when you let go of all the whys and are left with only the how. Not why live, but how to live, since I am alive. And Ecclesiastes' answer is strangely simple, with lucidity, with presence, with reverence for the mystery you cannot control. Carl Jung called this holding the tension of opposites, seeing beauty and horror, light and emptiness, prayer and silence, without choosing a side, without needing resolution. That is spiritual maturity. That is what Ecclesiastes points out. Life is not a story with a clear ending. It is a series of breaths between arrival and disappearance. And in between you gain fragments. A laugh, a wound, a sunrise, a goodbye. That's it. And that's all. Albert Camus understood this when he said, "In the middle of winter, I discovered that there was an invincible summer inside me. Not because the world changed, but because he stopped asking it to change. Faith that survives this fire is different. It is not based on answers. It is built on silence, doubt, and the fragile decision to stay, to breathe, to see, even when nothing is promised." This is where Ecclesiastes ends, not with triumphant revelation, but with a whisper. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. It is not fear of punishment. It is reverence for something greater than explanation, something you do not control, something that does not need to explain itself to you. This line is not submission. It is humility, the kind that is not forced, the kind that comes when your illusions have burned away, and what remains is only silence and the quiet, almost imperceptible pulse of being alive. But let's be honest, this kind of freedom is scary, because freedom without a roof, freedom without promises, freedom without guarantees, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like free fall, and that's exactly what it is. Kierkegaard wrote about vertigo, not the fear of falling, but the strange, dark desire to throw yourself off, because at least it would be a decision. At least it would be movement. Most people live tied to narratives they've never questioned. Narratives about what success is, about what love is, about what a well-lived life is. And these narratives function as handrails on a dark staircase. You can't see where you're going, but at least you have something to hold on to. Ecclesiastes rips out the handrail and says, "Look, you're in the dark, you always have been, and there is no handrail. This is not cruelty, it is lucidity. And lucidity hurts because it forces you to choose, without a pre-written script, without a moral system that guarantees reward, without an invisible judge keeping score. You have to decide, how am I going to live knowing that nothing is guaranteed?" And here's the turning point. Most people, when confronted with this, do one of two things. They pretend they didn't see it. They return to narratives. They bury themselves in work, consumption, distraction, anything that silences the question. They collapse. They decide that if nothing matters, then nothing is worth it. Passive nihilism, cynicism as armor. But Ecclesiastes suggests a third way. Don't pretend, don't collapse, see, and live anyway. Not because you found meaning, but because meaning is no longer a prerequisite for being present. This is radical, because it takes you out of the role of victim waiting for the universe to be fair, and puts you in the role of conscious witness who chooses how to respond. And here, right here, in this space between seeing the absurdity and choosing to continue, is where real freedom is born. Jean-Paul Sartre called this condemnation to freedom. You are free, and that freedom terrifies you because it means you are totally responsible for how you live, even in a world that owes you nothing. But Ecclesiastes does not use language of condemnation. It uses language of relief. Eat your bread with joy. Drink your wine with a merry heart. Enjoy life with the woman you love. All the days of this vain life that God has given you. Look at that phrase again. All the days of this vain life. He's not saying despite being vain. He's saying because it is vain, because it's temporary, because it won't last, because it will end without warning. That's exactly why every moment weighs so heavily. If life were eternal, you could put things off. You could say, I'll do that tomorrow. You could waste decades waiting for the perfect moment. But in a world where everything is vapor, where everything slips through your fingers, where nothing is guaranteed, procrastinating is insanity. Not because you need to be productive, but because every second you are alive is a second that will never come back. And if that scares you, good. It should. Heidegger called this being towards death. Living consciously knowing that you are going to die is not morbid. It is what wakes you up. It is what transforms abstract time into concrete life. And maybe that's why Ecclesiastes insists so much on simplicity. Eat, drink, love, work with your own hands. Feel the sun. Not because these things solve the absurdity, but because they are real while they happen. And real is all you have. There's a previous video here on the channel where we explore how the modern mind has been hijacked by narratives of infinite productivity, constant optimization, perpetual transformation, how we've been taught that being isn't enough. You must always be becoming something greater. But Ecclesiastes cuts that off at the root. It says, better is a handful of rest than 2 hands full of work and chasing after the wind. You don't need to be greater. You don't need to be optimized. You don't need to be more productive, more enlightened, more accomplished. You need to be here, completely, without division. Not in the future where you will finally succeed. Not in the past where things were better. Here, now, in this body, in this breath. And if you want to better understand how consciousness has been colonized by these narratives of perpetual insufficiency, there's a video on the channel that delves into exactly that. But for now, hold on to this idea. Presence is more revolutionary than any achievement, because achievement promises you that one day you will arrive. But presence says, you are already here, and here is all there is. Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, perhaps everything that is terrible is deep down something helpless that wants our help. The terror of living without guarantees is not the enemy. It is an invitation to stop negotiating with the universe, to stop making contracts where you promise to be good in exchange for protection, and to start living like someone who knows there is no contract, that there never was, that you have always been free, and you have always been alone, and you have always been complete, and that these 3 things, freedom, solitude, completeness, are not opposites. They are the same truth seen from different angles. Ecclesiastes doesn't save you, it wakes you up, and waking up hurts, but it also liberates, because now you know, there is no script, there is no guarantee, there is no automatic reward, there is only you, your breath, your choice, your moment, and that against all odds is enough. Ecclesiastes is not a book for the innocent. It is for those who have already lost something, for those who have seen the inside of hospitals at 3 in the morning, for those who have buried dreams and stood in the rain without metaphors. It offers no comfort because comfort belongs to those who still believe that life is fair. What it offers is a mirror, a reflection of how small we are, and how real that smallness can be. For the fate of the sons of men and the fate of animals is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath. Ecclesiastes 3:19. This verse is not poetic. It is a punch in the chest. Humans spend entire lives building towers of meaning, pretending they are more than animals, pretending they will live forever in some glorious continuation. But the earth swallows kings and beggars alike. The wind remembers no names. History forgets faster than we like to think. And yet this is not a call to despair. It is a removal of illusions. When you stop pretending that life is a story about you, you finally see it for what it is. A brief, raw, uncontrollable movement of time. Arthur Schopenhauer said, "We are like lambs playing in a field while the butcher sharpens his knife out of sight." This is not cynicism. It is honesty. And honesty hurts because it cuts through the performance we build to protect ourselves. Religion, ideology, nationalism, love, even ambition. They are all fragile masks against the great silence. Emil Cioran wrote, "We are all immersed in hell, every moment of which is a miracle." He was not glorifying pain. He was exposing the paradox of existence, how suffering and wonder live side by side inseparable. That is why Ecclesiastes offers no solution. It offers a language. a language for those who can no longer pray, for those who have been betrayed by certainty. It allows you to say what others silence, that perhaps the world makes no sense, that perhaps justice will not come, that perhaps meaning is not waiting behind the curtain. But something happens when you stop running from that silence. It doesn't destroy you. It sharpens you. It makes you quieter, more aware. You stop waiting for heaven to explain itself. You stop begging the universe for justice. You start living without contracts. And that's when a strange kind of strength is born. Not the strength of the hero who conquers, the strength of the witness who endures. Carl Jung called this holding the tension of opposites, seeing beauty and horror, light and emptiness, prayer and silence, without choosing a side, without needing resolution. This is spiritual maturity. This is what Ecclesiastes points to. Life is not a story with a clear ending. It is a series of breaths between arrival and disappearance. And in between you gain fragments. A laugh, a wound, a sunrise, a goodbye. That's it. And that's all. Albert Camus understood this when he said, "In the middle of winter, I discovered that there was an invincible summer inside me. Not because the world changed, but because he stopped asking it to change." Faith that survives this fire is different. It is not based on answers. It is built on silence, doubt, and the fragile decision to stay, to breathe, to see, even when nothing is promised. This is where Ecclesiastes ends, not with triumphant revelation, but with a whisper. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. It is not fear of punishment. It is reverence for something greater than explanation. Something you do not control, something that does not need to explain itself to you. This line is not submission, it is humility, the kind that isn't forced, the kind that comes when your illusions have burned away, and all that's left is silence, and the quiet, almost imperceptible pulse of being alive. The last lines of Ecclesiastes don't shout, they don't offer miracles or new prophecies. They just sit there, like a rock in the desert, cold, silent, motionless. Fear God and keep His commandments, for God will bring every deed into judgment. Ecclesiastes 12:13-14. Most people read this as a warning. It is not. It is a reminder. You are not the center. Your understanding is not the axis of the universe. There is something beyond you that does not bow to your questions. This is not the faith of those who need constant comfort. It is the faith of those who have walked through darkness and stopped expecting the light to be soft. It's not about answers, it's about reverence in the absence of clarity. Søren Kierkegaard called this a leap of faith. Not because faith is irrational, but because it exists beyond reason's ability to control the world. It's what happens when your mind has run out of explanations and your soul refuses to collapse. It's the quiet act of standing when nothing holds you up. Fyodor Dostoevsky wrote, "To love life more than its meaning." That is the core of this strange and disturbing book. Ecclesiastes does not give you meaning. It forces you to confront its absence, and then decide if you're going to keep breathing anyway. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid this confrontation. They drown themselves in distractions, in noise, in the endless pursuit of significance. They build little empires of self-importance, hoping that time will forget to erase them. But time forgets everyone. The wise, the foolish, the kind, the cruel, they all end the same way. Dust returning to dust. And when you stop fighting this truth, something unexpected happens. Not despair, freedom, not numbness, clarity. When you know that everything is temporary, you stop treating the temporary as if it were eternal. You stop living as if the world owes you explanations. And you start living as someone who knows they will be forgotten, and loves anyway. Marcus Aurelius, facing this same truth centuries later, wrote, "Soon you will have forgotten everything. Soon everything will have forgotten you." He did not write this in despair. He wrote it as liberation. Being small is not a curse. It is the truth. Being forgotten is not a tragedy. It is the condition of everything that breathes. In a world where empires fall and stars fade, your existence is simultaneously meaningless and miraculous. You don't have to prove your worth to the void. You don't have to control what cannot be controlled. You are a passing flame. And that is enough. Émile Cioran called this the dignity of disappearance, accepting the end without anger, living without needing the world to remember your name, breathing as if each second were simultaneously nothing and everything. This is what Ecclesiastes offers. Not comfort, not certainty, but a kind of brutal peace. The peace of those who have looked into the abyss and stopped begging it to speak. The peace of those who can hold silence without needing to turn it into song. This is where faith and nihilism meet, not in slogans, but in the quiet space where you understand that the world owes you no meaning, and you live anyway. You walk, you love, you break, you rebuild, you die, and the wind moves on, indifferent and infinite. This is not tragedy. It is the structure of everything. Living with this knowledge is not giving up, it is living awake. It is standing naked before the vastness and whispering, not to be heard, but because you are still here. But there is an even deeper layer, one that few can hold without looking away. Ecclesiastes doesn't just say you're going to die. It says your death won't mean anything special. As the wise man dies, so does the fool. There is no final distinction. There is no guaranteed posthumous recognition. There is no cosmic balance where your good deeds are weighed and you receive eternal validation. You simply cease to exist, and the world goes on, without pause, without mark, without mourning beyond the brief and forgettable. This is almost unbearable to face, because from childhood we are taught that our lives matter, that we will leave a legacy, that we will be remembered. But Ecclesiastes cuts through this illusion with a cold scalpel. There is no memory of the former, nor will there be any memory of those who come after. You will be forgotten. Your children will be forgotten. Your grandchildren will be forgotten. Everything you have built, loved, protected will eventually disappear as if it never existed. And here is the ultimate test. Can you live knowing this? Can you love knowing that this love will not last forever? Can you create knowing that your creation will be erased? Can you be kind knowing that no one will record your kindness? Most people can't, so they invent narratives. Life after death, karma, cosmic justice, eternal legacy. Not because these narratives are true, but because the truth is unbearable without them. But Ecclesiastes looks you in the eye and says, can you bear the truth without a narrative? And if the answer is no, he doesn't judge you. He just observes. But if the answer is yes, if you can look at total disappearance and still choose to be present, still choose to love, still choose to create, then something changes. Not in the world, in you. You stop living to be remembered, and you start living because you are alive. You stop doing things expecting something in return, and you start doing things because they are true while they happen. Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Works of art are of infinite loneliness." He was talking about creation, but he was also talking about existence. You are infinitely alone. No one can live for you. No one can die for you. No one can carry your weight for you. And this loneliness is not a problem to be solved. It is a condition to be accepted. And when you accept it, deeply without resistance, it ceases to be a prison and becomes freedom. Because now you know, no one is watching. No one is judging. No one is keeping score. You are free to live as you wish, not because nothing matters, but because importance no longer depends on external validation. What matters is what is true for you, now, here. Not what will be remembered, not what will be judged, not what will be rewarded, only what is real as it happens. And Ecclesiastes in the end is exactly that, an invitation to live in raw reality, without decorations, without promises, without guarantees. To live as someone who knows they will disappear completely, and who chooses presence anyway. Not because there is hidden meaning waiting to be discovered, but because presence is the only meaning that exists, and presence doesn't have to last forever to be real. It just has to be, now, completely, without division. Thomas Merton wrote, "The only real problem is that we are ourselves and discover that this being ourselves does not belong to us. You do not belong to yourself. You do not control how much time you have. You do not control what happens. You do not control how you will be remembered. But you belong to this moment, and this moment belongs to you. And when everything else is taken away, every narrative, every promise, every guarantee, what remains is this moment, this breath, this choice to be here." And Ecclesiastes says that this is enough, not because it solves the absurdity, but because it is all that is real. And real is all you have, and all you are. There is a moment, if you pay attention, when everything stops, not because something big happened, but because something small became impossible to ignore. It could be the way the afternoon light comes through the window. It could be the sound of someone breathing as they sleep next to you. It could be the smell of coffee, the silence after the music ends. Moments that promise nothing, that solve nothing, that simply are. And in those moments, if you are truly present, you understand what Ecclesiastes was trying to say all along. Not that life has no meaning, but that meaning is not something you find. It is something you are. When you stop searching, when you stop negotiating, when you stop demanding that the universe explain itself, and you just stay, breathe, see. Clarice Lispector called this the instant now. That second when the past and future disappear and only the now remains, pulsing, alive, indisputable. She wrote, "I tell you I'm trying to capture the fourth dimension of the instant now, which is so fleeting that it is no longer because now it has become a new instant now, which is also no longer. That's exactly it. You can't hold on to it, you can't keep it. You can only be." And being is the most radical act in a world that has taught you to always be becoming something else. Ecclesiastes doesn't ask you to find meaning. It asks you to stop searching and start living. Go, eat your bread with joy and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already accepted your works. Not when you deserve it, not when you achieve it, not when you prove something. Now, right now, just as you are. That is the ultimate liberation. Not liberation from something, liberation to something, to presence, to truth, to life as it is, not as it should be. You've been taught your whole life that you have to earn the right to exist, earn the right to rest, earn the right to be loved. But Ecclesiastes looks at you and says, you're already here. That's all there is to it. There's nothing else to achieve. There's no improved version of you waiting in the future. There's no perfect moment coming. There's just this. You, now, breathing. And if you can be completely here, without dividing yourself between the past and the future, without judging, without comparing, without demanding, then you understand. Not intellectually, viscerally, not as an idea, as an experience. And that experience has no name. It cannot be put into words, but you recognize it when it happens. It is the moment when you stop fighting against life and simply let it flow through you. The poet Rumi wrote, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." It sounds poetic, but it's literal. Every moment you are completely present contains everything. Not because it lasts forever, but because it is total while it lasts. When you drink water with total attention, you are drinking all the water that has ever existed. When you look at someone with total presence, you are seeing all of humanity in that person. When you breathe with total awareness, you are breathing all of existence. Not metaphorically, really, because totality is not about duration, it is about depth. And Ecclesiastes in the end is a manual of depth. How to be completely in something that will not last. How to love something that will disappear. How to create something that will be forgotten. And to do all of this not in spite of impermanence, but because of it. Because it is precisely the fact that it does not last forever that makes every second sacred. If you had infinite time, you could put it off, procrastinate, wait for the perfect moment. But you don't. You have this breath, this second, this choice. And then you have the next one, and then the next. And each one is a chance to be completely alive, or completely asleep. And Ecclesiastes shakes you and says, wake up. You're wasting the only time you have. Not wasting it on leisure or pleasure. Wasting it on absence. On not really being where you are. In being physically here but mentally in 1,000 places at once. In the past that won't return. In the future that won't arrive. In the fantasy of a different life. While this life, the only real one, the only one that exists, passes by without being lived. And when you die, it doesn't matter how much you achieved. What matters is how much you were truly present. Because in the end, the only thing you take with you is the experience of having been here. Not your possessions, not your achievements, not your recognition. Just the memory, fleeting, evanescent but real, of having been alive. Of having seen, felt, loved, suffered, created, existed. And Ecclesiastes ends like this. Not with a great revelation. Not with a promise of salvation. Just with the whisper, remember who you are. Remember where you are. Remember that this won't last. And live as if it matters, because it does. It matters not because it will be remembered, but because it is real now. And real is everything. Real is enough. Real is sacred. So here is the final question Ecclesiastes leaves you with. Will you live awake, or will you spend your whole life waiting for one day in some distant future when you will finally begin? Because that day does not exist. It never has. It never will. There is only now. It has always been now. It will always be now. And now is asking you for only one thing. Presence. Not perfection. Not enlightenment. Not achievement. Just being here. Completely. Without reservation. Without division. Being so completely that you and the moment are no longer separate. You are the moment. And when that happens, even for a second, you understand. You understand why sages of all traditions point to this. Not because it's the solution to some problem, but because it's the end of the problem. When you are completely present, there is no problem. There is no lack, there is no absence, there is only this pulsing, alive, complete. And then the moment passes, and you return, and the mind resumes, and the problem seems to return. But something has changed, you saw it. For an instant you saw it, and now you know it is possible, and that it is always available, always a second away. Just one conscious breath, just one non-judgmental glance, just one moment without division, and you are home. You always have been, you always will be. Ecclesiastes doesn't give you home. It reminds you that you never left it. What truth from Ecclesiastes confronted something you avoided seeing? Leave it in the comments, not to resolve, but to acknowledge. Watch the next videos on the channel. Count on me and follow the white rabbit.